Okay, everybody, welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. Good morning. Hopefully, you're doing really well so far today and staying healthy and safe. Today is our next lecture. It's Wednesday, April 1st. This is for our Chapman 10 a.m. crew. Welcome back, everybody. Glad to see you guys this morning. I'm here a little early, as usual, waiting for the 10 a.m. hour to arrive. But I'm sure, as I've seen in the past few meetings, people all start arriving in the first few minutes of class. So anyway, if you're here early, good morning. Glad to see you. And we'll definitely be getting in our important lecture today on epistemology in just a few minutes once 10 o'clock starts up. Cool. So anybody that knows others in the class, let them know we're getting started. But by now, I think we understand the routine. At our typical class time, we're just doing these live streams. Kitty. My cat's, I don't know. Guess it is April Fool's Day. I think maybe, I don't know if it's been canceled this year. It's probably not the year. People too stressed out with all their other issues, but I've had some fun little gags on this day in the past, I suppose, with some close friends anyway. But yeah, we made it through March. Here comes April. I just hope you guys are all hanging in there and doing really well. So yes, the topic is going to be knowledge, another lecture on this, and then more to follow on Friday. I'm going to try and catch up a little bit in some of the notes that I didn't get to fully finish at the Monday meeting. And we'll just go over as much as we have time for today. At any time, of course, people can always just tap in with their questions, comments. I think it's best to follow the live streams live. You're not going to get the same kind of interactive feel and the same depth of understanding, I believe, watching it later. So synchronous is best, but it's here archived for anybody at any time. Welcome one and all. Welcome back, you guys. Glad to see you on this Wednesday morning. Still about 3 or so minutes until the class time, so just hanging in there and waiting until it's 10. Hopefully all your other guys' classes and Zoom meetings and stuff are going well. Just, chip in, be as interactive as possible. It helps you, me, and everybody else. So any feedback, commentary, questions at all at any time, they're always good. Well encouraged. Okay, just a couple of minutes until it's 10, and then we'll definitely get started right on time. Good morning, Jessica, Brian. Hi, guys. Good to see you. We'll see others start to arrive pretty quickly, I'm sure. Yeah, 90 seconds or so. Welcome back, everybody. Hey, Kaylee. Nice to see you guys. Anybody else that's here, feel free to say hello. Good morning, everyone. Great. Got a lot of people getting into the live stream just now. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you guys. Make yourselves comfortable wherever you're at. Just kick back and enjoy a nice little lecture on philosophy. We got some more interesting topics to discuss today. Hey, Bridger, nice to see you. Awesome. Yes, so almost class time. Hey, Nelly. Emily, awesome. Good to see you too. All right, well, we're basically at our class time, so I'm going to just, I guess, get us started again. Welcome, everybody, back to class. This is Intro to Philosophy, 10 a.m. hour for Chapman, and I really appreciate having you guys here. We got some more important material to cover, so I'm just going to get right into it. We are on the subject now of knowledge and epistemology in this class. So it's all about the concept of knowledge for a little while. What is knowledge? What are the conditions required for a person to have it? What is the difference between really knowing something and just having a true belief or a lucky guess about something that happens to be correct? So what I started telling you guys about last time is that in the Western tradition, the discussion of knowledge goes and traces all the way back to the ancient Greeks, who lived over 2,400 years ago in some cases. So these ancient Greek philosophers, including the very well-known Socrates and his student Plato, gave us some important analysis of the concept of knowledge that really remained pretty stable and well-received all the way up until the 20th century. So I began by telling you a little bit about the life and history of Socrates, so basically that he lived in Athens, Greece, 2,400 years ago, that he practiced dialogue and discussion in the town square of Athens that was inspiring to some people, and he did establish like a loyal following of younger guys that would listen to his philosophical dialogues with others. But then some people in the Athenian government didn't like him, so they had him arrested and charged, and he was, how that story ends, he was executed, but his ideas and example lived on. Plato founded the academy, and we're here at the tail end of a long period of the historical transmission of these ideas and writings. So I told you about the life and times of Socrates very briefly, and then we just started to develop a vocabulary of terms that are important within the field of epistemology. So I just kind of want to review some of the terms, and then we have a couple of more to add to that. Then we will start to really go into the details of Plato's dialogue called the Meno, which discusses the ancient Greek definition of knowledge that remained in place for a long time. So just a quick review, we talked about the term proposition. And maybe you could remember, what is a proposition? It's something. What is the concept of a proposition? What's the meaning of this term? Just to see if you have a quick recall of that. A proposition, in other words, is what? What could it be? You're right, Nellie, yes, and Jessica. It's the meaning of a sentence. Very good. So, not to be confused with the sentence itself. It's the underlying information content of the sentence. So what that is telling you is that sometimes there can be multiple sentences, but they have got the same propositional content. So in that case, you have more than one sentence, but only one proposition. One easy example of this that I mentioned to you guys were statements that exist in different languages. So one sentence is the snow is white. That's English. Another sentence is der Schnee ist weiß. That's German. But although those two sentences are different sentences, they're different sounds, different letters, they have the same meaning. They don't have different meanings. So whether it's two sentences that have the same meaning in different languages, or whether it is in the same language, two sentences which express identical information. If I tell you that I'm in the kitchen, that's a fair enough sentence. If I say the kitchen is where I am, that is the same information. It's the same proposition, but it's a different sentence because it replaces the subject about. So the sounds that we use when we speak or the symbols that we use when we write, they're just the conveyors or the carriers of informational content. But the content and meaning itself is individuated as a proposition. Okay? So after that, we talked about the term truth. And I believe I told you that these different terms are listed in this order because they're kind of piggybacking and building on each other. So for you to know what truth is, you kind of first have to know that it applies to propositions or sentences. So what does it mean for a sentence to be true? Let's go over that again. For a sentence to be true, what does this require? That what? If it's true, then the sentence what? let's see. In order for a sentence, a statement to be true, what has to be the case? Let me see. Just the sentence matches reality. Exactly, yes. Berger, Jordan. When the statement, what it says, matches the facts of reality, then it's true. Okay, so correct. Yes, Sophia. If I tell you I'm wearing glasses, this is true. It's just I'm saying it, but I'm not just saying it. It's real. It's happening. If I tell you I'm wearing a hat at this time, that's a false statement. It's information, but it's not matched by the facts of reality. So true information, true statements correspond and mirror the actual circumstances of the world. If I told you that I was born in 1920, I'd be lying. I'd be saying something that's not what happened. So statements can be true or false. They can never be both. They have to be exactly one or the other. And whether they are true or false depends on whether the world corresponds in the way that the fact says. If I told you there's aliens in outer space, that may be true. It may be false. Right now, I guess I don't know, but it cannot both be true and false. They cannot both exist and also not exist. So anyway, when you compare a statement and what it says to reality, you're seeing a true statement if the world and its facts match whatever the sentence said, okay? Now, next we talked about the word belief. And that kind of also relates to the concept of truth. Because when a person, let's say, believes a sentence, when you have a belief in a sentence, what does that mean? To believe some sense or statement is, in other words, to what? What do you think? Suppose I believe a given proposition. In other words, we're saying what? To believe a sentence, to believe a statement is to, let me see, to think that it is true. Correct. Yes, once again. So beliefs that people have can be different from one person to the next. Most people, let's say, believe that God exists, and so the sentence, God exists, they think that is true. And then some people that are non-believers, atheists, whatever, they hear the sentence, God exists, and they think that's not really real, that's not really true. Take the weird case of the flat earthers. I hope there's none around here, but some people, for whatever reason, think that the earth is not a sphere, but rather a disk that's flat. So to the statement, the planet is a sphere, they don't believe that. They think that's not true. But as much as there are, let's say, two camps on these questions, one side says it's a sphere, one side says it's not, there cannot be two different shapes of the one world. So there's two beliefs, but there's only one planet with one shape. So there's one objective set of facts, but then what you believe about these facts can be subjective from person to person. So our beliefs can divide and differ from person to person, whether it's on questions of morality, policy, a scientific fact, or whatever. People can disagree, and they do. But there's still only one world, and the facts within it are objective. So people can either believe one thing or another, but there's not two different worlds, even when two people have two different beliefs. Maybe if there's, let's say, a person being put on trial for a crime, one juror thinks they're guilty. The other person thinks they're not guilty. They have different beliefs about the question or the statement, this person is guilty, but they cannot both be guilty and innocent. So you understand, right, that beliefs can be inaccurate or they can be correct. In the perfect world, all our beliefs would be true, because in that case, we would only, think things are the case that really are. We'd be getting it right. To have a false belief is not what you want, because it means that by definition of false and truth, you think the world is a certain way, but you're actually wrong and you're misinformed about the way it is. So in the best case, we'd like to have a true and correct appreciation of reality. We'd love it if all of our beliefs were true, but since we're not perfect, since we're not gods or whatever, we sometimes have false beliefs, and we just do our best to try and screen those off. Okay, so the next little vocabulary item as we go over some terminology and vocabulary within the realm of epistemology is this one, the word justification. Okay, so let's go over this. What do you think, based off of your common sense and your intuition, what do you think it means to say, if I have a justified belief? What does that mean? What is the difference between having a justified belief versus having an unjustified belief? What do you think would it take to make a belief have justification? Just think about that. Like, what does it mean in, perhaps even if you had to guess, to claim a belief has justification. Okay, Jordan, you're saying that you have facts to support it. That's very good, and that is pretty much along the correct lines. Many ways that this could be expressed. The way I'll say it is this. It's when you have, okay, I've got a couple more suggestions. You may think something is true based on sufficient evidence. Good. Anna, same. A justified belief has evidence behind it. All very good and correct. So that's exactly right. Justification is when your belief, when you have good reasons or evidence to support your belief. So to support, to back up your belief. Okay, so having a justified belief is that it is having a belief, but it's not just a random hunch or a shot in the dark. It's something that's based on actual evidence or reasons that you have. And so beliefs could be justified, or they could have no justification or a weak justification. Say, for example, that a person, let's go into the court trial example. The person is being accused of a crime, and now they're being prosecuted in court. But you don't have justification to believe that they are guilty or innocent until you have heard the presentation of arguments and evidence in the courtroom. So on the first day, when the guy walks in, the defendant that's being accused, the juror can't say, look at him, he's guilty. I just feel like he's guilty. And he could say that, but that's not justified yet, right? Because he needs better reasons if he hears the evidence and arguments presented by the lawyers, and then judges based on that this person is guilty and that's been proven in some significant way, then now the belief in guilt is justified. But at the first, it was just, let's say, a weird hunch or an expression even of bias or something like that, right? So justification exists when you have reasons that you could give to say why this is probably true. Let me give you some other examples of justified beliefs. Take the statement that dinosaurs existed at some time in the past. I would say I believe that, and I think most others do as well. Is it justified to believe in the existence of the dinosaurs? I would argue yes. If so, what do you think is the reason that that's a justified belief? Why is it that I can say I'm justified in believing that, as opposed to having no justification for believing that there were dinosaurs? What would be the justification in that case? The bones, yes, the fossil record that had been excavated by archaeologists and stuff, right? So there's some physical empirical evidence that gives reasons to believe in their existence. So it's not exactly just unjustified. Exactly, there's evidence, and the evidence that I'm talking about is that physical evidence. Okay, so justification is another important epistemic concept. It's just having reasons to believe something. Sometimes our beliefs are unjustified, and sometimes they are justified. Maybe today I really love science fiction, and I say, I hope there's something out there. I think it would be so cool if there was extraterrestrial alien life in the universe, so I believe that. Maybe I believe it. Am I justified in believing it? That's a tough one. I would say we don't have any direct evidence, like some physical evidence that we've observed, but we can extrapolate from like statistical models that, with so much life on the one planet that we inhabit and the size and scale of the universe, it's not improbable that it could be somewhere else. But when you think about trying to give a supporting argument or reasons to defend the belief in a claim, that is when you're trying to give the justification for it, okay? Why do we seek justification? Because following evidence usually leads us to the truth. Of course, it's not 100% of the case. Sometimes evidence can mislead, but we have to go off something, and the most secure route to getting to a true belief is to follow evidence and facts to a logical conclusion. Okay, so that's justification. Now, another important term as we build up, and this is the last one before I start talking about the dialogue of the Meno, but the term is epistemic agent. So an epistemic agent is just a kind of fancy sounding word for any being that is capable of having beliefs or knowledge. Okay, so that's the idea here. A being that is capable of having beliefs or knowledge. A being that is capable of having beliefs or knowledge. That's what the word epistemic agent refers to. So these are going to be, I hope, easy enough questions, but quickly just to sort of compare this definition to common sense. Look at this marker here, right, that I'm writing stuff with on this little whiteboard. This marker that's in my hand, what do you say, yes or no? Is it an epistemic agent? Is the marker an epistemic agent as defined here? Or no, is it not? Which one? Epistemic agent or not, the marker? What do you think? This, I hope, is not too hard. Definitely no, it is not at all. I know that's an elementary question, but it's something I just want to focus our mind on for a minute. And it's why we know so clearly that this is not an epistemic agent. Well, I mean, for a very straightforward reason. It's an inanimate object, right? It's not a living, system. It has no perceptual system, no central nervous system. So it's not like taking in the lecture as we are, appreciating the information that's being written on the board or thinking about what it means. So maybe you and I form beliefs about all kinds of subjects, but a marker and many other things besides don't. I guess I kind of give it away, but are we epistemic agents? Now that is an easy answer. Yes, we are. We human beings can and do form beliefs on indefinitely many topics. And we have a lot of knowledge also. Good question, Brian. I was actually going to mention that just next because it's something that could be questioned of whether animals count as epistemic agents as well. But I would think that they do. They just have a lower level of detailed knowledge than us. So like, for example, humans that we know stuff about outer space, that we're the third planet from the sun. We know all sorts of physical principles, how to split an electron, right? How to build a microwave. We understand history. We understand distant events in the past, like the establishment of the United States Constitution. We know all sorts of things about chemistry, biology, mathematics. So humans have a quite expansive range of knowledge about all types of interesting subjects, and that's why it's, I guess, fascinating to be these life forms that are the most advanced and intelligent of all. Now, markers, inanimate objects, and other things of those kinds are not epistemic agents, but there are other life forms on the planet Earth that are non-humans. Could animals of some kind be epistemic agents? I would say probably. It's just that they don't have the same kind of detailed range of knowledge that I was mentioning when it comes to humans. An animal's not thinking about, the establishment of the Constitution or facts about astronomy or chemistry or biology, but they might know things like about when they're facing danger or when there's some stimulus that's in the environment which would be conducive to their survival that they should pursue. If you have pets, I mean, it seems like they can gain a sort of routine sense of what's likely to happen next, and then they can base expectations on that. So like if you're reaching for the food bag or whatever, you have a dog, maybe the dog sort of knows that's incipient to it being fed, and therefore it exhibits that behavior, or it's waiting at the door when you get home, and so it seems to like know that you're arriving. But the knowledge base of animals, I would say, if it exists, is much more minimal than a human, and that's the reason that we are so interesting as life forms. So back to the laundry list of topics and terms here. Just ending with epistemic agent, that it's fascinating to reconsider the fact that if you just look at the mass of things that exist in the physical universe, if you were to say take it by weight, the overwhelming majority of things that exist are not epistemic agents. You just have dead matter out there, planets, stars, gaseous bodies, comets, and then you have on the surface of this earth some cognitive activity, some ability to perceive. So we're not just objects like those things, but we're subjects too. We don't just exist, but we also perceive and judge. So we're epistemic agents. Now, having gone over all those terms, I'm finally ready to tell you guys what this ancient Greek definition of knowledge was. And I had to go over the vocabulary first because it's a combination of some of those terms. So the consensus thinking in epistemology that goes back all those thousands of years to the ancient Greeks is that knowledge is just this. It is a justified true belief. Justified true belief. So when you have knowledge, what it takes is to have all three of those conditions met at once. You think something's true, so that's believing it. Furthermore, it actually is true, so you're getting it correct. That's the second truth condition. And then third, you have to have justification for believing it, meaning you have to have some type of reasons or evidence that you're aware of that backs your belief up. So when you think something's true, it really is, and you have good evidence, then you know that. But if any one of these three conditions is not met, if you don't have the truth condition or the belief condition or the justification condition met, then that will be a failure of knowledge. So 2 out of 3 is not enough. 1 out of 3 is not enough. You have to have all 3 at once in order to know. Sometimes epistemologists like to express this in terms of a little acronym, and you'll sometimes see it stated as follows. K, standing for knowledge, is equivalent to JTB, where those 3 letters, J, T, and B, clearly stand for the 3 conditions mentioned there: justification, truth, and belief. So let me give you some examples then that hopefully resonate with your common sense, so you can see and understand why this seems to be a correct definition of knowledge, why all the conditions are necessary, but why they're not enough unless you have all 3. So let me give you an example of like a multiple choice questionnaire on a quiz that you would take like in a history class. Okay, so let's say this is the question. So exam question says, what year was the Declaration of Independence signed for the United States? And they give you 4 optional responses, like so. So answer A, 1776, B, 1876, C, 1950, D, 2020. Okay, so the question was, what year was Declaration of Independence signed, right? And sorry, I'm trying to get the glare to go away a little bit. Hopefully that's fine. I don't know why that's right there on the first question, but whatever. Maybe like this. Well, we just work with the tools we got. Anyway, you see them there. So question on the quiz, what year was Declaration of Independence signed? And you see these 4 listed options. Okay, now take a student that doesn't know their history too good, and they're thinking, oh man, I wish I would have studied. I'm having a hard time remembering here. I don't know at all. Actually, I have no idea. Okay, I guess what, 1876? So I'm filling in B. So they filled in B. Now, did the student know the answer when they filled in B in response to this question? Did they know the answer as to when the Declaration was signed? That's the easy one. No, they didn't know it. Well, why? Why was their answer not counted as knowledge? Why didn't the professor say, yeah, he gets credit for knowing the answer? Because what's wrong with his answer? What's the problem with this answer? It's failing one of the conditions, and you can easily say which one. It's not true, exactly. Is it true that the Declaration was signed in 1876? No, it was signed in 1776. So clearly, he won't get credit for having knowledge concerning this question if he gives a false response. So hopefully you understand, just based on this common sense example, that truth is a necessary prerequisite for a certain belief to be knowledge. He believed it was 1876. That's why he filled that other wrong answer in. But he doesn't get credit for knowledge because it's incorrect. So being correct or true is a certain requirement for having knowledge. Otherwise, we would say of all answers, whether they're correct or incorrect, it's all knowledge. Knowledge is true beliefs, false beliefs. We don't care. We make no distinction. But obviously, that's not how it works. You cannot be credited with knowledge of something that is not true at all, because it's not knowledge. Knowledge requires truth. Here's another example. Could a person know that me, the professor here, Vulich, was born in 1920? Could someone know that I was born in 1920? Could a person know that about me? What do you think? Is that possible to know that Vulich is born in 2020? Sorry, 1920? No, yeah, you can't know that. Now, and why not? Well, again, the reason is because it's just not true. Hopefully it's evident to you that I'm not 100 years old right now, but I'm not. So a person can't know that about me. But at best, if they're really way off or, misinformed, they couldn't know that I was born in 1920, but maybe the person could what? Using our terminology here. They wouldn't be able to know this because it's not true. But if they were really way off, they could at a minimum what? About me being born in 1920. You can't know that. But you could, I guess, what? You could believe it, exactly, William. You could believe that, meaning you think I was. I don't know why anybody would think that, but if they had that belief, they could have a false belief about that, but you can't have false knowledge. Okay, so knowing something requires that you got it correct, but a belief doesn't. So your beliefs can be false, but knowledge can't be, right? You can give a answer on a test that's the wrong answer, and that just shows that you have a false belief about what the correct answer was, but it's not called knowledge unless it's actually true. Okay. So I'm just giving you those examples there so that you would understand that truth is one necessary condition on this definition of knowledge. Now, let's go over the justification condition now. So say that I'm just a person who loves science fiction, and I tell you right now, I believe there's extraterrestrial life out there. Do I know that? I mean, it could be true. But even if it is true, I don't really know it, and why not? Why don't I know that there's aliens out there? Even if there are, I don't know it. And the reason is because I'm missing something. I'm missing what? It's not justified, or at least it's not justified well enough to say that it passes the bar of being actual knowledge. They're still subject to doubt, right? So I would need better proof. If I had evidence that was like solid, rock solid, if the Mars rover started beaming back images of little life forms on the Mars surface, then we would say, now I actually know this. Before I was just kind of guessing or speculating. But now it's knowledge because it's a belief that's true, but it's also backed by the evidence that we see. Do you know that I'm wearing glasses right now? I would hope that you at least believe it, because seeing is believing, right? It's something I would hope you believe right now. It's true. It's no hologram, no illusion. It's true. And what's your justification? Well, just the visual perception that you have of it. So that's good evidence, and I would say you know that. But if any of the conditions is not met, right, if the person is lacking justification, or their belief is false, or they don't believe this thing, then they fail to know it. So like the flat earther does not have knowledge, because their belief, I'm hoping we can agree, is a false belief. Let me tell you like one more example involving the multiple choice thing. So say that the question again is, when was the Declaration of Independence signed? Was it which of these four options is the right answer? Suppose that the student's thought process is like this. They're like, oh man, I still don't know what it is. I wish I knew. I have to, I guess. So let me see what it could be. Well, 2020, that seems like it's too recent. So I'm not sure, but I think I could rule that one out. So they cross off that. Now they've gotten it down to 3. And they're like, okay, well, it's got to be A, B, or C, I guess. I don't know which one it is, but I think I remember something vaguely about the number 76. I just don't know which century. So which one? It could be either one. I'm going to put in 1870. Okay, I'll go with 1776, just a random guess. So they filled in A. Now, is that the correct answer in response to the question, when was Declaration signed? Is it A? And yes, it is. Just spoiler alert, it is. But does this student know the right answer based on how they filled it in? Did they know that it was A? I see that yes is coming in from my previous question, but now, did this student who filled A on a hunch, like kind of random guess, did they know? And of course they didn't know, because once again, what's missing is the evidence or justification. The student that knew the answer doesn't just fill it in with hesitation and confusion and second guessing. The student that knows the answer says, I'm filling this in because I'm fully aware of all the evidence that makes it the correct answer. Like I could tell you who were the signatories to the Constitutional Convention and the Articles of Confederation that existed in the years leading up to 1776. And I could give you specific dates at which these events happened. So in that case, the person knows it. But it's because they have justification backing up their answer, which they could provide to anybody to defend the answer given. Okay? So in the same sense, I gave you the jury trial case. If you judge the person guilty on day one before you even hear any evidence, you don't really know they're guilty. But if the evidence shows it, then after the presentation of arguments, maybe you could come to know that. So anyway, knowledge isn't just making random lucky guesses and getting them true, but also having evidence or reasons why they're likely to be true. So if you've got all 3 conditions at once, justification, truth, and belief, then that's something that you have knowledge about. There's a metaphor I could give you to help reinforce this current concept. So say that these 3 conditions that amount to knowledge are being compared to the ingredients in like a cake. We could say this: each one's needed, but none of them is enough by itself. No combination of 2 out of 3 is enough without the third. So each individual ingredient is necessary, but you only have enough to make the cake, as it were, when you got all 3. So suppose I told you that to make a cake, you needed flour, sugar, and water. Okay, well, is sugar one of the necessary ingredients? Yes. But what if you only have sugar and not flour and water? Is that enough for the cake? No. So in that case, you have one thing that's necessary, but it's not enough by itself. If you just had water and flour, but no sugar. Do you have 2 needed ingredients? Yes. But do you have enough to make this item? No, because you're missing one item that is required for them to be jointly sufficient. So in the same way, these could be thought of as like the 3 ingredients that bake the cake of knowledge or whatever. You need each one, but unless they are all 3 present at once, you don't yet have enough for knowledge. So just having a true belief with no evidence, that's not enough. Having some justified belief, but it's false, that's of course not knowledge either. So a justified true belief, though, on the other hand, is knowledge. Okay, so with that discussion in mind, and with that definition of knowledge being stated, now I'm ready to talk to you guys a little bit more in depth about the writing of Plato from ancient Greece, which does discuss this concept in some good detail. So let's go over the Meno. So now we are definitely breaking down the selection of writing from Plato, which is called the Meno. It's called the Meno because it's a conversation piece between Socrates and this general named Meno, and they're talking about knowledge. So it's a very short piece of writing, and because of that, I can actually read for you most all of everything in it. So it starts off like this. Socrates is talking to Meno, and he says, a man who knew the way to Larissa or anywhere else you like, and went there and guided others, would surely lead them well and correctly? And Meno says, certainly, Socrates. Okay, so let me, at the conclusion of each little snippet of dialogue, I'm going to break down what's happening in that piece. So here, what Socrates asked is just this question. Suppose that somebody knows how to get to a city in Greece called Larissa. If they know how to get there because they've gone many times, couldn't they lead another person that's never been there to that destination based on their knowledge? Okay, now Larissa, what's that? Larissa is just another city in Greece, which is 100 miles north of Athens. And they're talking about this in the city of Athens. So what is Socrates asking? He says, if somebody knows how to get up to Larissa 100 miles north, and they've done it many times, couldn't they lead someone else that's never made the journey to the same place and get them there because they know how to do it themselves? And Meno just says, certainly. All right. Now, it's not too complex what's being asked here. Think about it in your own terms. You're, I assume right now, like at your home or whatever, or dorm or, whatever you had to do in wake of the, shutdown and everything. But you know how to get to, let's say, our typical classroom at Chapman, 206B or whatever in the Argyros Forum. So since you know how to get to that room or even just Chapman campus overall from wherever you're at right now, like you know how to get from point A to B. You're at point A, point B is Chapman. You know how to get there because why? Because you've gone so many times and you have the experience. So based on your knowledge of how to get there from where you're at now, couldn't you lead a stranger that's never been to Chapman to the campus? Suppose you had a friend visiting. Now you probably won't have a friend visiting, but suppose that you did, and you wanted to just, get them to check out your campus. Suppose this was a normal time. Then couldn't you lead the person to campus from your current location based on your knowledge? You understand this? It's easy to understand that, yes, you could probably lead someone. You certainly could lead someone because you've done it yourself, and it would be just as easily as going there on your own, right? Does that make sense, everybody? So the first little back and forth, Socrates just asks, hey, if someone knows how to get to Larissa from here, couldn't they lead some stranger that's never made the journey using their knowledge? And Meno says yes. So that's why he says, a man who knew the way to Larissa or anywhere else and went there and guided others would surely lead them well and correctly. And Meno says yes. All right, so after that, a second question is asked by Socrates to Meno. He asks him this next. He says, well, what if someone had had a correct opinion as to which was the way, but had not gone there, nor indeed had knowledge of it? Would he not also lead correctly? And in reaction to that, Meno again says, certainly, Socrates. So what's being asked here is this. suppose that a person doesn't actually know how to get to Larissa because they've never gone, but they have a correct opinion as to the way. Okay, so this term correct opinion that Socrates is using, this is supposed to stand for 2 out of the 3 ingredients of knowledge, as it were. 2 out of the 3 conditions that we talked about for knowledge. So what do you think, based on common sense, out of justification, truth, belief, JTB, what 2 parts do correct opinion stand for without the third? He says, what if someone had a correct opinion but not knowledge? So in other words, if they just had these 2/3 of the knowledge equation satisfied. True belief, yes, without justification. That's right, William. So this is just a true belief without justification, without having the reasons. Okay, so for example, no, it's not justification and belief, Bridger. It's truth and belief without the justification. So correct is a synonym for true. Opinion is a synonym for belief. And no, that's fine. I just kind of wanted to correct any misunderstanding. So correct opinion is merely having a true belief without any evidence or reasons to back it up. And what is Socrates asking? He says, so on the one hand, suppose someone knows how to get to Larissa. They could easily lead someone there because they know. But take a second case, a person that doesn't really know how to get there, that they've never gone on their own, but they have a correct opinion nonetheless. Couldn't that be just as useful in getting people over there? And think about it like this. In a modern day context, when you're trying to find a destination, sometimes you just know how to get there. And you could just go on your own without any external aid or guidance. But other times, you've never been somewhere. And in the year 2020 right now, what do you think would be the way you'd get somewhere if you didn't actually know based on your own previous experience? You'd use like a navigation assistant, right? Like Google Maps or something, some GPS navigation system. So suppose that you had the equivalent of a correct map with correct instructions as to how to get from point A to B. But you've never done it yourself. Nonetheless, this map works and the instructions are correct. Couldn't that also be used to lead you and others to that destination? And Meno says again, yes. So basically look at it this way. If you know how to get somewhere based on your knowledge, that's one way to lead people, using knowledge. But another possibility would be you just rely on a map, and the map is accurate. And now that substitutes for your knowledge, but it still could get people to the right destination. Does that make sense? So that's what Socrates asked Meno, and Meno gave him a yes answer. But now they go on a little further. So Socrates continues. He says, as long as he has the right opinion about that of which the other has knowledge, he will not be a worse guide than the one who knows, since he has a true opinion, though it is not knowledge. And Meno replies, in no way worse. So Socrates is just kind of playing with the idea that why would it be better to know then? If the correct map works just as well, why would you prefer to actually know the instructions or know the right path? If a correct opinion will get the job done, then what's better about having knowledge? And he poses that question to Meno next. He says, so correct opinion is no less useful than knowledge? And I wonder what you guys would think. Take it from the perspective of our question involving the comparison of knowing how to get somewhere versus using Google Maps. Do you think that there's a little bit of an extra advantage to you when you know how to get there on your own versus when you have to rely on a map and you've never gone before? What's, if anything, the benefit to having the knowledge instead of just having the correct map? What do you think would be the extra advantage? Because that's what he's asking Meno here. He wants Meno to give him an answer to that. He's saying, so what is knowledge no better than a correct opinion if they both get you there? Yeah, okay, good one, Caesar. So you're saying, well, why? What if you can't access the map? That's one thing, right? Maybe because you've never gone before and the map is your sole guidance. What happens if something goes wrong with the map? Or, right, because you've never made this journey before, you might not necessarily know whether you can trust the map on every single occasion, right? Suppose that there's a difficult fork in the road and you're not sure how it corresponds to the instructions given on the map. You might therefore lose your way. But if you had knowledge of how to go to the destination, then you'll know everything about all the alternate routes and all the other little idiosyncrasies along the way. Bridger, you say, I guess because you would not make any mistakes since you know what roads to take. And that's correct. Yeah. So Meno says this back to Socrates. He says, the one who knows will always get there, But the one who's merely got a correct opinion might not trust the map, might not trust the opinion being correct, even though it is. And therefore, without that extra assurance and confidence, they could get lost along the way. So Meno says that. He says, yes, to this extent, Socrates. But the man who has knowledge will always succeed, whereas he who has true opinion will only succeed at times. Now, Socrates doesn't want to give it to him right away. And he says, well, how do you mean? Because won't he who has the right opinion always succeed as long as the opinion is right, as long as the map is correct? Meno relents for a moment and he says, well, that appears to be so of necessity. And now you're making me wonder, Socrates, if this is true, why is knowledge prized more highly than correct opinion? And why are they different? And Socrates then says, well, do you know why you wonder, or should I tell you? And Meno says, well, by all means, Socrates, tell me. Okay, so now Socrates is going to give Meno the reason that he thinks knowledge is superior and more valuable than just a correct opinion merely. Good. Yes, William. The knowledge is concrete in your mind because of the justification. The correct opinion might not be retained. That's important. And that is exactly kind of the thing that he's going to say next. To explain it in his own way, he wants to help us by thinking of an analogy. And this analogy involves reference to a cultural superstition and myth that existed in the time of Socrates in Athens, ancient Athens, Greece. So he talks to us next about this famous sculptor who lived back then. This sculptor's name was Daedalus. Okay, now this was a very well-known Greek sculptor, Daedalus. He made amazingly realistic statues of human figures. And he was the best in the land, and he established this amazing reputation for very lifelike and realistic-looking human sculptures. Now, because these were such prized possessions and works of art, this was the cultural rumor and myth that developed, that if you ever had a chance to acquire one of those Daedalus statues, it's a beautiful thing, and it would be better for you to attach it to the ground with ropes, because they thought this. They're so realistic, they're so darn realistic, that these statues made by Daedalus, if you don't attach them to the ground and secure them with ropes, then the moment you go to sleep or turn your back or something, these super realistic statues are probably just going to do what they thought. What do you think their myth and belief was? Why should they be attached by ropes to the ground? Because if not, then the moment you're not around, they could just what? Or they probably would what? A myth, but something they believe. Walk away, run away, exactly. Come to life and just disappear from your property. So they say, better to have it down there with ropes, because it's a beautiful statue with or without the ropes, but you'd rather have it with the ropes because now it's not going to leave. It's going to stay there and it's going to stay in place. So you get to retain it. Okay? Now, that's kind of a metaphor that he's giving, because he says the same thing is true of correct opinions. Why would you rather have knowledge than just having a correct opinion? Because knowledge adds something to correct opinion. It adds the justification element. And that justification element is, like, by analogy or metaphor, equivalent in terms of its role to the ropes. Because the ropes secure the statues that are beautiful so they don't leave. And justification, he says, grounds and reinforces and secures your correct opinions so they won't leave, not your property, but your mind, right? So the student that filled in the multiple choice exam by just having a random lucky guess, that's not information that he's going to retain. If he took the same test a year later and his knowledge or amount of information remains the same in his mind, then he's not going to systematically give the correct answer over and over again, because he'll misremember since it's not based on anything. But the student who fills it in confidently and correctly, because they have a full mastery of all the reasons that that is the correct answer, they're not going to forget that. They're not going to change their mind about that. So they have a correct opinion now when they took the test, but they're going to have it for the rest of their life too. It's kind of like, if you look up a fact and you don't actually study the information, but you just look up like what year was it, you're not going to remember that information later, because you have to have the whole backstory of evidential factors to ground it within your mind. So let me read you a little of the dialogue where he makes these points in his own words. He says, well, Meno, it's because you paid no attention to the statues of Daedalus, but maybe they don't have any in Thessaly. That's where Meno's from. And Meno says, what do you mean when you say that? Socrates says, well, they too run away and they escape if one does not tie them down, but they remain in place if they are tied down. And Meno says, so what? Socrates says, well, because to acquire an untied work of Daedalus is not worth much, like acquiring a runaway slave, because it does not remain. But it is worth much if it is tied down, because his works are very beautiful. What am I thinking of when I say this? True opinions. Because true opinions, as long as they remain, are a fine thing, and all they do is good. You get the correct answer in the moment, and that's a good thing. But they're not willing to remain long, and they escape from a man's mind, so that they are not worth much until one ties them down by giving an account of the reason why. And that, Meno, is recollection, as we previously agreed. After they are tied down, in the first place they become knowledge, and then they remain in place. That is why knowledge is prized higher than correct opinion, and knowledge differs from correct opinion because it is tied down. So there's this basing function of justification when it comes to correct beliefs. The justification keeps it in place, keeps it from leaving your mind or from you misremembering or forgetting it. In the same way, by metaphor, these ropes physically ground statues and prevent them from leaving or running away. So the ropes are to the statues as justification is to correct opinion. Justification upgrades a correct opinion from just a lucky guess or hunch to something that you actually know. And when you're just guessing and speculating, even if your speculation or guess is correct, it's not something that is well remembered by you because it's not grounded on anything. An interesting thing I think about this metaphor that Socrates gives us when he compares justification to actual ropes is that whenever people talk about having beliefs that are justified, we employ verbal metaphors that sound a lot like tying things down by ropes. So when we have justified beliefs, what do we say? We say, well, my belief, it's really based on something, based to the ground. Or we say, my belief is supported by reasons. Like these statues gain support physically by the ropes. So whether we say based on something, supported by something, grounded on something, I have grounds, those all kind of call to mind the metaphor of the ropes, which physically ground, base, and support these Daedalus statues. So in the end, why would it be better for you to know the answer to the question on the multiple choice exam rather than, let's say, looking up the answer from an external source which you don't actually gain knowledge from? Because maybe you'll get the answer right on one occasion if you just know what bubble to fill in. But when there is justification that supplies you with the correct answer, then it's not likely to be misremembered. In another case, when you have evidence for something, you stop changing your mind about it too. So I told you earlier that I believe, or maybe I believe, that there's extraterrestrial life somewhere in the universe. At least some people believe that, right? But I might change my mind 100 times in a given year. I watch a science fiction movie, I'm like, there's something out there. Next day, I don't know, I watched like some kind of really nihilistic dark movie and I'm like, oh, it's amazing there's even life here. This is probably nothing else. But what would cause me to stop flip-flopping and changing my mind forever is if justification came through, which proved the case or gave sufficient evidence to show that it was the case. So once, we got like samples of microbial life on Mars or the moon coming back, on a petri dish, we would no longer say, who knows, it could be, it could not be. At that point, it would become knowledge, and it would become something stable and likely to last. So correct opinions are good for as long as you have them, but you won't have them forever unless they're grounded by evidence and reasons. So this is what Socrates ends up finally saying is the advantage from knowing versus just having correct opinions. Because knowledge is stable since it's propped up and based on evidence. Correct opinions, though, which are just beliefs that may or may not be, well, if they're correct, they are true. So correct opinions are beliefs that are true, but since they're not based on reasons, they're not things that you either remember or retain. So, that would be the end of the discussion of Plato's Meno. Now, as much as this sounds like a solid definition of knowledge, and it was a consensus view that withstood thousands of years of analysis, we're going to talk on Friday about how fast forward 2,000 years to 1963 in America, this American philosopher named Edmund Gettier wrote a very short paper that kind of completely overturned this long-standing consensus view. And what he showed was that, in fact, justified true belief is not a complete definition of knowledge. In many cases, that's enough, but there are counterexamples to that definition, which he provides. So we got a little bit pushed back because I wanted to really give us a firm basis on this new topic and go over a lot of important background and vocabulary. But on Friday, we will go over the work of Gettier and show how he provided a critique to this long-standing Greek definition of knowledge. And we're still wrestling with the questions raised by Gettier's problem cases today. So we're in a funny position in the current day when it comes to knowledge. We no longer think that we have a solid grasp on exactly what knowledge is. It's something about having a true belief. And it's something about having good reasons and evidence. But then there's this extra something that is yet unspecified, which we're still not quite able to put our finger on. And therefore, there's still work for future epistemologists to further provide a correct assessment analysis of what human knowledge is. It's a weird thought that we don't quite have an understanding of knowledge because it's so fundamental to what we are as human beings. It's such a concept that runs through many important things that we deal with every day that you'd think that that would be right there, very clearly set down. But there's a real major gap lying at the heart of our intellectual lives, and that is that knowledge itself remains somewhat puzzling and difficult to pin down a correct definition of. So we'll find more interesting commentary on this on Friday. I want you guys to definitely read the work of Gettier. It's only like a page or two. It's very short, even though some technical stuff in there that I'll help you with. And then we'll also start talking about Descartes and the meditations, both on Friday and in the Monday meeting that follows. And I'll have you guys' midterms all graded up this week. I'm working to get them done by Friday. Maybe it'll have to stretch into Friday evening, but either way, over the weekend, your grades will be ready and you can start asking me for those by email. Okay, guys, well, I know we all have busy things we got to get to today, so I'm going to let you go. But thanks again for tuning in. Make sure to keep viewing throughout the remaining part of the semester. It's good to have a little bit of interaction with you guys as we're all out here in the quarantine. So I mean, I wouldn't say it's been enjoyable, but at the very least, it's good to have some time talking to you guys about these important and interesting things in the comfort of our own homes. So thanks again, and have a good one. And until Friday, stay safe and healthy, and I will see you back then. Okay, thanks.